Welcome to another Sunday Superversive live stream. I don't have my co-host today with me, um, giving him the night off so he can get some stuff done for the week ahead, all that good stuff. I'm going to go back to Pilgrim's Progress. In our last episode, Christian found salvation. He found the cross, and his burden rolled off his back into the tomb. On his way there, he met many different men, especially men who attempted to from uh, uh, keep him from his ultimate goal of salvation. He abandoned everything for it, and he has found it. And now he lives a life before him to see how well he runs it. As even though um, he did achieve salvation, which was the main goal of his quest, uh, he how do I want to put it? He's just not out of the woods yet. Much as how when a Christian becomes saved, he is not immediately taken up into heaven to meet with Jesus in the clouds, so too does Christian not immediately end his quest. Now, he has just now been given a word on his forehead, roll, which he is to keep, and he is found by angels. And now he has found three men with fetters on their heels, the names of which are Simple, Sloth, and Presumption. Remember, this is Christian allegory. The goal isn't necessarily to, um, provide some sort of modernist story, but rather to show the Christian life as the writer was shown it. Christian, then seeing them lie in this case, went to them if peradventure he might awake them, and cried, You are like them that sleep on top of the mast, for the Dead Sea is under you, a gulf that has no bottom. Awake therefore and come away, be willing also, and I will help you off with your irons. He also told them, if that he goeth about like a roaring lion comes by, you will certainly become a prey for his teeth. With that they looked upon him, and began to reply in this sort. Simple said, I see no danger. Sloth said he had a little more sleep. And Presumption said, Every fat must stand upon his own bottom. And so they lay down to sleep again, and Christian went on his way. Yet was he troubled to think that men in that danger should so little esteem the kindness of him that so freely offered to help them, both by awakening of them, counseling of them, and proffering to help them off with their irons. And as he was troubled thereabout, he espied two men come tumbling over the wall on the left hand of the narrow way, and they made up a pace to him. The name of the one was Formalist, and the name of the other was Hypocrisy. So, as I said, they drew up unto him, who thus entered with them into discourse. Gentlemen, whence came you, and whither do you go? Formalism and hypocrisy. We were born in the land of vainglory, and are going for praise to Mount Sion. Why came you not in at the gate which standeth at the beginning of the way? Know you not that it is written that he that cometh not in by the door, but climbeth up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber? They said that to go to the gate for entrance was by all their countrymen counted too far about, and that therefore their usual way was to make a short cut of it, and to climb over the wall as they had done. But will it not be counted a trespass against the lord of the city, whither we are bound, thus to violate his revealed will? They told him that for oh, that's them talking to him. That as for that, he needed not to trouble his head thereabout, for what they did they had custom for, and could produce, if need were, testimony that would witness it for more than 1,000 years. But, said Christian, will your practice stand a trial at law? That custom, it being of so long a standing as above 1,000 years, would doubtless now be admitted as a thing legal by an impartial judge. And besides, if we get into the way, what's the matter which way we get in? If we are in, we are in. Thou art but in the way, who, as we perceive, came in at the gate, and we are also in the way that came tumbling over the wall. Where now is thy condition better than ours? I walk by the rule of my master. You walk by the rude working of your fancies. You are counted thieves already by the Lord of the way. Therefore I doubt you will not be found true men at the end of the way. You come in by yourselves without his direction, and shall go out by yourselves without his mercy. To this they made him but little answer, only they bid him look to himself. Then I saw that they went on every man in his own way, without much conference one with another, save that these two men told Christian that, as to the laws and ordinances, they doubted not but they should as consciously do them as he. Therefore said they, We see not wherein thou differest from us, but by the coat that is on thy back, which was, as we trow, given thee by some of thy neighbors, to hide the shame of thy nakedness. By laws and ordinances you will not be saved, since you came in not by the door. And as for this coat that is on my back, it was given to me by the Lord of the place whither I go, and that, as you say, to cover my nakedness with. And I take it as a token of his kindness to me, for I had nothing but my rags before. And besides, thus I comfort myself as I go. Surely, think I, when I come to the gate of the city, the Lord thereof will know me for good, since I have his coat on my back, a coat that he gave me freely in the day that he stripped me of my rags. I have moreover a mark in my forehead, of which perhaps you have taken no notice, which one of my Lord's most intimate associates fixed there in the day that my burden fell off my shoulders. I will tell you moreover that I had them given me that I had then given me a roll sealed to comfort me by reading, as I go in the way. I was also bid to give it at the celestial gate in token of my certain going in and after it. All which things I doubt you want, and want them because you came in not at the gate. To these things they gave him no answer, only they looked upon each other and laughed. Then I saw that they went on all, save that Christian kept before, who had no more talk but with himself, and that sometimes sighingly and sometimes comfortably. Also he would often be reading the roll that one of his shining ones gave him, by which he was refreshed. I beheld then that they went on, till they had come to the foot of the hill Difficulty, at the bottom of which there was a spring. There was also in the same place two other ways besides, which came straight from the gate. One turned to the left hand, the other to the right, at the bottom of the hill. But the narrow way lay right up the hill, and the name of the going up the side of the hill, which is called Difficulty. Christian now went to the spring, drank thereof to refresh himself, and then began to go up the hill, saying, This hill, though high, I covet to ascend. The difficulty will not me offend, for I perceive the way to life lies here. Come, pluck up heart, let's neither faint nor fear. Better, though difficult, the right way to go, than wrong, though easy, where the end is woe. The other two also came to the foot of the hill, but when they saw that the hill was steep and high, and that there was two other ways to go, and supposing that these two ways might meet again, with that up which Christian went on the other side of the hill, therefore they were resolved to go in these ways. Now the name of one of those ways was Danger, and the other Destruction. So the one which took the way which is called Danger, which led him into a great wood, and the other took directly up the way to Destruction, which led him to a wide field full of dark mountains, where he stumbled and fell and rose no more. Shall they who wrong begin yet rightly end? Shall they at all have safety for their friend? No, no, in headstrong manner they set out, and headlong will they fall at last to no doubt. I looked then after Christian, to see him going up the hill, where I perceived he fell from running to going, and from going to clambering upon his hands and knees, because of the steepness of this place. Now, about the midway to the top of the hill was a pleasant arbor, made by the Lord of the hill for the refreshing of weary travelers. Thither therefore Christian got, where also he sat down to rest him. Then he pulled his roll out of his bosom, and read therein to his comfort. He also now began afresh to take a review of the coat or garment that was given to him as he stood by the cross. Thus pleasing himself a while, he at last fell into slumber, and thence into a fast sleep, which detained him in that place until it was almost night. And in his sleep his roll fell out of his hand. Now as he was sleeping, there came one to him and awakened him, saying, Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways, and be wise. And with that Christian suddenly started up, and sped him on his way, and went apace until he came to the top of the hill. Now when he got up to the top of the hill, there came two men running him against him amain. The name of one was Timorous, and the name of the other Mistrust, to whom Christian said, Sirs, what's the matter, you run the wrong way? Timorous answered, that they were going to the city of Zion, and had got up to that difficult place. But, said he, the further we go, the more danger we meet with, wherefore we turned and are going back again. Yes, said Mistrust, for just before us lies a couple of lions in the way, whether sleeping or waking we know not, and we could not think if we came within reach that they would presently pull us to pieces. Then said Christian, You make me afraid, but whither shall I fly to be safe? If I go back to mine own country, that is prepared for fire and brimstone, and I shall certainly perish there. If I can get to the celestial city, I am sure to be in safety there. I must venture. To go back is nothing but death. To go forward is fear of death, and life everlasting beyond it. I will yet go forward. So Mistrust and Timorous ran down the hill, and Christian went on his way. But thinking again of what he heard from the men, he felt in his bosom for his roll, that he might read it therein and be comforted. But he felt and found it not. Then was Christian in great distress, and knew not what to do. For he wanted that which used to relieve him, and that which should have been his pass into the celestial city. Here, therefore, he began to be much perplexed, and knew not what to do. At last he bethought himself that he had slept in the arbor that is on the side of the hill, and falling down upon his knees, he asked God forgiveness for that foolish fact, and then went back to look for his roll. But all the way he went back, who can sufficiently set forth the sorrow of Christian's heart? Sometimes he sighed, sometimes he wept, and oftentimes he chid himself for being so foolish as to fall asleep in that place which was erected only for a little refreshment from his weariness. Therefore he went back, carefully looking on that side, this side, and on that, all the way he went, if he happily might find his roll, that had been his comfort so many times in his journey. He went thus until he came again to the side of the arbor, where he sat and slept, but that sight renewed his sorrow the more, by bringing again, even afresh, his evil of sleeping into his mind. Thus, therefore, he now went on bewailing his sinful sleep, saying, O wretched man that I am, that I should sleep in the daytime, that I should sleep in the midst of difficulty, that I should so indulge the flesh as to use that rest for the ease of my flesh, which the Lord of the hill hath erected only for the relief of the spirits of pilgrims. how many steps have I took in vain? Thus it happened to Israel for their sin. They were sent back again by the way of the Red Sea. And I am made to tread those steps with sorrow, that I might have trod with delight, had it not been for that sinful sleep. How far might I have been on my way by this time? I am made to tread those steps thrice over, which I need not have trod but once. Yea, also I am like to be benighted, for the day is almost spent. Oh, that I had not slept! Now by this time he was come to the arbor again, where for a while he sat down and wept, but at last, as Christian would have it, looking sorrowfully down under the settle, he espied his roll, which he with trembling and haste catched up and put into his bosom. But who can tell how joyful this man was when he had gotten his roll again? For this roll was the assurance of his life and acceptance at the desired haven. Therefore he laid it up in his bosom, gave thanks to God for directing his eye to the place where it lay, and with joy and tears betook himself again to his journey. But oh, how nimbly now did he go up the rest of the hill! Yet before he got up, the sun went down upon Christian, and this made him then again recall the vanity of his sleeping to his remembrance, and thus he again began to condole himself. O thou sinful sleep, how for thy sake am I like to be benighted in my journey? I must walk without the sun, darkness must cover the path of my feet, and I must hear the noise of doleful creatures because of my sinful sleep. And he remembered the story that Mistrust and Timorous told him of, how they were frighted with the sight of the lions. Then said Christian to himself again, These beasts range in the night for their prey, and if they should meet with me in the dark, pardon me, how should I shift them? How should I escape being by them torn in pieces? Thus he went on his way, but while he was thus bewailing his unhappy miscarriage, he lifted up his eyes, and behold, there was a very stately palace before him, the name of which was Beautiful, and it stood just by the highway side. So I saw in my dream that he made haste, and went forward, that if possible he might get lodging there. Now before he had gone far, he entered into a very narrow passage, which was a furlong off of the porter's lodge, and looking very narrowly before him as he went, he espied two lions in the way. Now, thought he, I see the dangers that Mistrust and Timorous were driven back by. The lions were chained, but he didn't see the chains. Then he was afraid, and thought also himself to go back after them, for he thought nothing but death was before him. But the porter at the lodge, whose name was Watchful, perceiving Christian made a halt, as if he would go back, cried unto him, saying, Is thy strength so small? Fear not the lions, for they are chained, and are placed there for trial of faith where it is, for discovery of those that have none. Keep in the midst of the path, and no hurt shall come to thee. Then I saw that he went on, trembling for fear of the lions, but taking good heed to the directions of the porter, he heard them roar, but they did him no harm. Then he clapped his hands and went on, till he came and stood before the gate where the porter was. Difficult is behind, fear is before. Though he's got on the hill, the lions roar. A Christian man is never long at ease. When one fright's gone, another doth him seize. Then said Christian to the porter, Sir, what house is this, and may I lodge here tonight? The porter answered, This house was built by the Lord of the Hill, and he built it for the relief and security of pilgrims. The porter also asked whence he was and whither he was going. I come from the city of destruction, and am going to Mount Zion, but because the sun is now set, I desire, if I may, to lodge here tonight. What is your name? My name is now Christian, but my name at first was Graceless. I came of the race of Japhet, whom God will persuade to dwell in the tents of Shem. But how doth it happen that you have come so late? The sun is set. I had been here sooner, but that wretched man that I am, I slept in the arbor that stands on the hillside. Nay, I had notwithstanding that been here much sooner, but that in my sleep I lost my evidence and came without it to the brow of the hill, and feeling for it, and finding it not, I was forced with sorrow of heart to go back to the place where I slept my sleep, where I found it, and now am come. Porter: Well, I will call out one of the virgins of this place, who will, if she likes your talk, bring you into the rest of the family, according to the rules of this house. So watchful the porter rang a bell, at the sound of which came out at the door of the house a grave and beautiful damsel, named Discretion, and asked why she was called. Excuse me. The porter answered, This man is in a journey from the city of destruction to Mount Zion, but being weary and benighted, he asked me if he might lodge here tonight. So I told him that I would call for thee, who after discourse had with him, mayeth do as seemeth thee good, even according to the law of the house. Then she asked him whence he was, and whither he was going, and he told her. She asked him also how he got into this way, and he told her. Then she asked him what he had seen and met with in the way, and he had told her. And last she asked his name, and he said, It is Christian, and I have so much more the more a desire to lodge here tonight, because by what I perceive this place was built by the Lord of the hill, for the relief and security of pilgrims. So she smiled, but the water stood in her eyes, and after a little pause she said, I will call 2 or 3 more of the family. So she ran to the door and called out Prudence, Piety, and Charity, who, after a little more discourse with him, had him to the family. And many of them, meeting at the threshold of the house, said, Come in, thou blessed of the Lord. This house was built by the Lord of the hill on purpose to entertain such pilgrims in. Then he bowed his head and followed them into the house. So when he was come in and sat down, they gave him something to drink, and consented until that until supper was ready, some of them should have some particular discourse with Christian. For the best improvement of time, they appointed Piety and Prudence and Charity to discourse with him. And thus they began. Piety. Come, good Christian, since we have been so loving to you, to receive you into our house this night, let us perhaps, if we may better ourselves thereby, talk with you of all things that happened to you in your pilgrimage. Christian. With a good will, and I am glad that you are so well disposed. What moved you at first to betake yourself to a pilgrim's life? I was driven out of my native country by a dreadful sound that was in my ears, to wit, that unavoidable destruction did attend me if I abode in that place where I was. I'm going to change the voice for Piety here. But how did it happen that you came out of your country this way? It was as God would have it, for when I was under the fears of destruction, I did not know whither to go. But by chance there came a man even to me, as I was trembling and weeping, whose name is Evangelist, and he directed me to the wicket gate, not wicked, which else I should have never found, and so set me into the way which that hath led me directly to this house. But did you not come by the house of interpreter? Yes, I did see Such things there, the remembrance of which will stick by me as long as I live, especially three things to wit: how Christ, in despite of Satan, maintains his work of grace in the heart; how the man had sinned himself, quite out of hope of God's mercy; and also the dream of him that thought in his sleep the day of judgment was come. Why, did you hear him tell his dream? Yes, and a dreadful one it was. I thought it made my heart ache as he was telling of it, but yet I am glad I heard it. Was that all you saw at the house of interpreter? No, he took me and had me where he showed me a stately palace, and how people were clad in gold that were in it, and how there came a venturous man and cut his way through the armed men that stood in the door to keep him out, and how he was bid to come in and win eternal glory. Methought those things did ravish in my heart, and I would have stayed at that good man's house a twelvemonth, but that I knew I had further to go. And what saw you else in the way? Saw! Why, I went but a little further, and I saw one, as I thought in my mind, hang bleeding upon the tree, and the very sight of him made my burden fall off of my back, for I groaned under a heavy burden. But then it fell down from off me. 'Twas a strange thing to me, for I never saw such a thing before. Yea, and while I stood looking up, for then I could not forbear looking, three shining ones came to me. One of them testified that my sins were forgiven me. Another stripped me of my rags and gave me this broidered coat which you see. And the third set the mark which you see in my forehead, and gave me the sealed roll. And with that he plucked it out of his bosom. But you saw more than this, did you not? The things I have told you, were the best. Yet some other matters I saw, namely, I saw three men, simple sloth and presumption, lie asleep a little out of the way as I came with irons upon their heels. But do you think I could awake them? I also saw formalist and hypocrisy come tumbling over the wall, to go, as they pretended, to Zion. But they were quickly lost, even as myself did tell them, but they would not believe. But above all, I found it hard work to get up the hill, and as hard to come by the lion's mouth. And truly, if it had not been for the good man, the porter, that stands at the gate, I do not know but that, after all, I might have gone back again. But now I thank God I am here, and I thank you for receiving me. Then Prudence thought good to ask him a few questions, and desired his answer to them. Do you not think sometimes of the country from whence you came? Yes, but with much shame and detestation. Truly, if I had been mindful of that country from whence I came out, I might have had opportunity to have returned. But now I desire a better country, that is, a heavenly one. Do you not do you not yet bear away with you some of the things that then you were conversant withal? Yes, but greatly against my will, especially my inward and carnal cogitations, with which all my countrymen as well as myself were delighted. But now all those things are my grief, and might I but choose mine own things, I would choose never to think of those things more. But when I would be doing of that which is best, that which is worst is with me. Prudence, do you not find sometimes as if those things were vanquished, which at other times are your perplexity? Yes, but it is seldom. Yes, that is but seldom. But they are to me golden hours in which such things happen to me. Can you remember by what means you find your annoyances at times as if they were vanquished? Yes, when I think that what I saw at the cross, that will do it. And when I look upon my broidered coat, that would do it. Also when I look into the roll that I carry in my bosom, that will do it. and when my thoughts wax warm about whither I am going, that will do it. And what is it that makes you so desirous to go to Mount Zion? Why, I hope to see him alive, that did hang dead on the cross, and there I hope to be rid of all those things that to this day are in me an annoyance to me. There they say there is no death, and there I shall dwell with such company as I like best. For to tell you truth, I love him, because I was by him eased of my burden, and I am weary of my inward sickness. I would fain be where I shall die no more, and with the company that shall continually cry, Holy, holy, holy. Then said Charity to Christian, Have you a family? Are you a married man? I have a wife and 4 small children. And why did you not bring them along with you? Then Christian wept and said, Oh, how willingly I would have done that, but they were all of them utterly averse to my going on pilgrimage. But you should have talked to them, and have endeavored to have shown them the dangers of being left behind. So I did, and told them also what God had showed me to me, the destruction of our city. But I seemed to them as one that mocked, and they believed me not. And did you pray to God that he would bless your counsel to them? Yes, and that with much affection, for you must think that my wife and 4 children were very dear to me. But you did tell them of your own sorrow and fear of destruction, for I suppose that destruction was visible enough to you? Yes, over and over and over. They might also see my fears in my countenance, in my tears, and also in my trembling under the apprehension of the judgment that did hang over our heads. But all was not sufficient to prevail with them to come with me. But what could they say for themselves why they came not? Why, my wife was afraid of losing this world, and my children were given to the foolish delights of youth. So what by one thing and what by another, they left me to wander in this manner alone. But did you not, with your vain life, damp all that you, by words, used by way of persuasion, to bring them away with you? Indeed, I cannot commend my life, for I am conscious to myself of many failings. Therein I know also that a man by his conversation may soon overthrow what by argument or persuasion he doth labor to fasten upon others for their good. Yet this I can say, I was very wary of giving them occasion, by any unseemly action, to make them averse to going on pilgrimage. Yea, for this very thing, they would tell me I was too precise, that I denied myself of sins, for their sakes, in which they saw no evil. Nay, I think I may say, that if what they saw in me did hinder them, it was my great tenderness in sinning against God, or of doing any wrong to my neighbor. Indeed, Cain hated his brother, because his own works were evil, and his brother's righteous. And if thy wife and children have been offended with thee for this, they thereby show themselves to be implacable to good, and thou hast delivered thy soul from their blood. Now I saw in my dream that thus they sat talking together until supper was ready. So when they had made ready, they sat down to meat. Now the table was furnished with fat things and with wine that was well refined, and all their talk at the table was about the Lord of the hill, namely about what he had done, and wherefore he did what he did, and why he had builded that house. And by what they said, I perceived that he had been a great warrior, and had fought with and slain him that had the power of death, but not without great danger to himself, which made me love him the more. For, as they said, and as I believe, said Christian, he did it with the loss of much blood, but that which put glory of grace and to all he did was that he did it out of pure love to his country. And besides, there were some of them of the household that said they had seen and spoke with him since he did die on the cross. And they have attested that they had it from his own lips that he is such a lover of poor pilgrims that the like is not to be found from the east to the west. Moreover, they moreover gave an instance of what they affirmed, and that was he had stripped himself of his glory, that he might do this for the poor, and that they heard him say and affirm that he would not dwell in the mountains of Zion alone. They said, moreover, that he had made many pilgrims princes, though by nature they were beggars born, and their original had been the dunghill. Thus they discoursed together until late at night, and after they had committed themselves to their Lord for protection, they betook themselves to rest. The pilgrim they laid in a large upper chamber, whose window opened towards the sun rising. The name of the chamber was Peace, where he slept till break of day. And then he awoke and sang, "Where am I now? Is this the love and care of Jesus for the men that pilgrims are? Thus to provide that I should be forgiven, and dwell already in the next door to heaven." So in the morning they all got up, and after some more discourse, they told him that he should not depart until they had showed him the rarities of this place. And first they had him into the study, where they showed him the records of greatest antiquity, in which I remember in my dream they showed him the first pedigree of the Lord of the Hill, that he was the son of the Ancient of Days, and came by an eternal generation. Here also was more fully recorded the acts that he had done, and the names of the many hundreds that he had taken into his service, and how he had placed them in such habitations that could neither by length of days nor decays of nature be dissolved. Though they read to him some of the worthy acts that some of the servants had done, as how they had subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in the fight, and turned to flight the armies of the aliens. Then they read again in another part of the records of the house, where it was showed how willing their Lord was to receive his into favor any, though they in time past had offered great affronts to his person and proceedings. Here also were several other histories of many other famous things, of all which Christian had a view, as of things both ancient and modern, together with prophecies and predictions of things that have their certain accomplishment, both to the dread and amazement of enemies, and the comfort and solace of pilgrims. The next day they took him and had him into the armory, where they showed him all manner of furniture, which their Lord had provided for pilgrims, as swords, shield, helmet, breastplate, all prayer, and shoes that would not wear out. And there was here enough of this to harness out as many men for the service of the Lord as there be stars in the heavens for the multitude. They also showed him some of the engines with which some of his servants had done wondrous things. They showed him Moses' rod, the hammer and nail which Jael slew Sisera, the pitchers and trumpets and lamps too, with which Gideon put to flight the armies of Midian. Then they showed him the ox's goad, wherewith Shamgar slew 600 men. They showed him also the jawbone with which Samson did such mighty feats. They showed him moreover the sling and stone with which David slew Goliath of Gath, and the sword also with which their Lord will kill the man of sin in the day that he shall rise up to the prey. They showed him besides many excellent things, with which Christian was much delighted. This done, they went to their rest again. Then I saw in my dream that on the morrow he got up to go forwards, but they desired him to stay till next day also, and then said they, we will, if the day be clear, show you the delectable mountains, which they said would yet further add to his comfort, because they were nearer the desired haven than the place where at present he was. So we consented and stayed. When the morning was up, they had him to the top of the house, and bid him look south. So he did, and behold, at a great distance, he saw a most pleasant mountainous country, beautified with woods, vineyards, fruits of all sorts, flowers also, with springs and fountains, very delectable to behold. Then he asked the name of the country. They said it was Emmanuel's land, and it is as common, said they, as this hill is, to and for all the pilgrims. And when thou comest there from thence, said they, thou mayest see to the gate of the celestial city, as the shepherds that live there will make appear. Now he bethought himself of setting forward, and they were willing he should. But first, said they, let us go again into the armory. So they did, and when he came there, they harnessed him from head to foot with what was of proof, lest perhaps he should meet with assaults on the way. He being therefore accoutred, walketh out with his friends to the gate, where he asked the porter if he saw any pilgrims pass by. Then the porter answered, Yes. Pray, did you know him? Said he. I asked him his name, and he told me it was Faithful. Oh, said Christian, I know him. He is my townsman, my near neighbor. He comes from the place where I was born. How far do you think he may be before? He got by this time below the hill. Well, said Christian, good porter, the Lord be with thee, and add to all thy blessings much increase for the kindness thou hast showed to me. Thus he began to go forward, but discretion, piety, charity, and prudence would accompany him down to the foot of the hill. So they went on together, reiterating their former discourses, till they came to go down the hill. Then said Christian, as it is difficult coming up, so far as I can see, it is dangerous going down. Yes, said Prudence, so it is, for it is a hard matter for a man to go down into the valley of humiliation as thou art now, and to catch no slip by the way. Therefore said they, are we come out to accompany thee down the hill? So he began to go down, but very warily, yet he caught a slip or two. Whilst Christian is among his godly friends, their golden mouths make him sufficient mends for all his griefs, and when they let him go, he's clad with northern steel from top to toe. Excuse me. Then I saw in my dream that these good companions, when Christian was gone down to the bottom of the hill, gave him a loaf of bread, a bottle of wine, and a cluster of raisins, and then he went on his way. But now in this valley of humiliation, poor Christian was hard put to it, for he had gone but a little way before he espied a foul fiend coming over the field to meet him. His name was Apollyon. Then did Christian begin to be afraid, and to cast his mind whether to go back or to stand his ground. But he considered again that he had no armor for his back, and therefore thought that to turn the back to him might give him a greater advantage with ease to pierce him with his darts. Therefore he resolved to venture and stand his ground, for thought he, had I no more in mine eye than the saving of my life, 'twould be the best way to stand. So he went on, and Apollyon met him. Now the monster was hideous to behold. He was clothed with scales like a fish, and they are his pride. He had wings like a dragon, feet like a bear, and out of his belly came fire and smoke, and his mouth was the mouth of a lion. When he was come up to Christian, he beheld him with disdainful countenance, and thus began to question with him. Whither came you, and whither are you bound? I am come from the city of destruction, which is the place of all evil, and am going to the city of Zion. By this I perceive thou art one of my subjects, for all that country is mine. For I am the prince and god of it. How is it thou hast run away from thy king? Were it not that I hope thou mayest do me more service, I would strike thee now at one blow to the ground. I was born, indeed, in your dominions, but your service was hard, and your wages such as a man could not live on. For the wages of sin is death. Therefore, when I was come to years, as I did other considerate persons do, I did as other considerate persons do, look out, if perhaps I might mend myself. There is no prince that will thus lightly lose his subjects, neither will I lose thee. But since thou complainest of thy service and wages, be content to go back. What our country will afford, I do here promise to give thee. But I have let myself to another, even to the king of princes, and how can I with fairness go back with thee? Thou hast done in this according to the proverb, changed a bad for worse. But it is ordinary for those that have professed themselves to his servants after a while to give him the slip, and to return again to me. Do thou so too, and all shall be well. I have given him my faith and sworn my allegiance to him. How then can I go back from this and not be hanged as a traitor? Thou didst the same to me, yet I am willing to pass by all, if now thou wilt yet turn again, and go back. What I promised thee in my nonage, and besides, what I promised thee was in my nonage. And besides, I count that the prince under whose banner now I stand is able to absolve me, yea, and to pardon also what I did as to my compliance with thee, and besides, O thou destroying Apollyon, to speak truth like his service, his wages, his servants, his government, his company, and country better than thine. Therefore leave off to persuade me further. I am his servant, and I will follow him. Consider again, when thou art in cool blood, what thou art like to meet with in the way that thou goest. Thou knowest that for most part his servants come to an ill end, because they are transgressors against me and my ways. How many of them have been put to shameful deaths, and besides, thou contest his service better than mine, whereas he never came yet from the place where he is to deliver any of them that served him out of our hands. But as for me, how many times, as all the world very well knows, have I delivered, either by power or fraud, those that have faithfully served me, from him and his, though taken by them, and so I will deliver thee. His forbearing at present to deliver them is on purpose to try their love, whether they will cleave to him to the end. And as for the ill end, and thou sayest they come to, that is most glorious in their account. For present deliverance they do not much expect it, for they stay there for their own glory, and then they shall have it, when their prince comes in his, and the glory of the angels. Thou hast already been unfaithful in thy service to him, And how dost thou think to receive wages of him? Wherein, O Apollyon, have I been unfaithful to him? Thou didst faint at first setting out, when thou wast almost choke in the gulf of despond. Thou didst attempt wrong ways to be rid of thy burden, whereas thou should have stayed until thy prince had taken it off. Thou didst sinfully sleep and lose thy choice thing. Thou wast also almost persuaded to go back at the sight of the lions, and when thou talkest of thy journey, and of what thou hast heard and seen, thou art inwardly desirous of vainglory in all thou sayest and doest. All this is true and much more, which thou hast left out, but the prince whom I serve and honor is merciful and ready to forgive. And besides, these infirmaries possessed me in thy country, for there I sucked them in, and I have groaned under them. I've been sorry for them, and have obtained the pardon of my prince. Then Apollyon broke into a grievous rage, saying, I am an enemy to this prince. I hate his person, his laws, and people. I am come out on purpose to withstand thee. Apollyon, beware what you do, for I am in the king's highway, the way of holiness, therefore take heed to yourself. Then Apollyon straddled quite over the whole breadth of the way, and said, I am void of fear in this matter. Prepare thyself to die, for I swear by my infernal den that thou shalt go no further. Here will I spill thy soul. And with that he threw a flaming dart at his breast. But Christian had a shield in his hand, with which he caught it, and so prevented the danger of that. Then did Christian draw, for he saw 'twas the time to bestir him. And Apollyon as fast made at him, throwing darts as thick as hail, by which, notwithstanding all that Christian could do to avoid it, Apollyon wounded him in his head, his hand, his foot. This made Christian give a little back. Apollyon therefore followed his work amain, and Christian again took courage, and resisted as manfully as he could. This sore combat lasted for above half a day, even till Christian was almost quite spent, for you must know that Christian, by reason of his wounds, must needs grow weaker and weaker. Then Apollyon, espying his opportunity, began to gather up close to Christian, and, wrestling with him, gave him a dreadful fall. And with that Christian's sword flew out of his hand. Then said Apollyon, I am sure of thee now. And with that he had almost pressed him to death, so that Christian began to despair of life. But as God would have it, while Apollyon was fetching of his last blow thereby to make a full end of this good man, Christian nimbly reached out his hand for his sword and caught it, saying, Rejoice not against me, O mine enemy. When I fall I shall arise. And with that gave him a deadly thrust, which made him give back as one that had received his mortal wound. And Christian, perceiving that, made at him again, saying, Nay, in all these things we are more than conquerors, through him that loved us. And with that Apollyon spread forth his dragon wings, and sped him away, that Christian saw him no more. A more unequal match can hardly be. Christian must fight an angel, but you see, the valiant man, by handling sword and shield, doth make him, though a dragon, quit the field. In this combat no man can imagine, unless he had seen and heard as I did, what yelling and hideous roaring Apollyon made all the time of the fight. He spake like a dragon, and on the other side what sighs and groans brast from Christian's heart. I never saw him all the while give so much as one pleasant look till he perceived he had wounded Apollyon with his two-edged sword. Then indeed he did smile and look upward, but the dreadfulest sight I ever saw. So when the battle was over, Christian said, I will here give thanks to him that hath delivered me out of the mouth of the lion, to him that did help me against Apollyon. And so he did, saying, Great Beelzebub is the captain of this fiend, designed my ruin, therefore to this end. He had sent him harnessed out, and he with rage, that hellish was, did fiercely me engage. But blessed Michael helped me, and I by dint of sword did quickly make him fly. Therefore to him let me give lasting praise, and thank and bless his holy name always. Then came to him an hand with some of the leaves of the tree of life, the which Christian took and applied to the wounds that he had received in battle, and was healed immediately. He also sat down in that place to eat bread and to drink of the bottle that it was given him a little before. So being refreshed, he addressed himself to his journey, with a sword drawn in his hand, for he said, I know not but some other enemy may be at hand. But he met with no other affront from Apollyon, quite through the valley. Now at the end of the valley was another called the Valley of the Shadow of Death, and Christian must needs go through it, because the way to the celestial city lies through the midst of it. Now this valley is a very solitary place. The prophet Jeremiah describes it a wilderness, a land of deserts and of pits, a land of drought and of the shadow of death, a land that no man but a Christian passes through, and where no man dwelt. For here Christian was worse to put to it than in his fight with Apollyon, as by the sequel you shall see. I saw then in my dream that when Christian was got to the border of the shadow of death, there met him two men, children of them, that brought up an evil report of the good land, making haste to go back. To which Christian spake as follows, Whither are you going? They said, Back, back, and we would have you to do this too. Either life or peace is prized by you. Why, what's the matter? Matter, said they, we were going that way as you are going, and went back as far as we went as far as we durst, and indeed we almost passed coming back, for had we gone a little further, we had not been here to bring the news to thee. But what have you met with? Said Christian. Why, we were almost in the valley of the shadow of death, but that by good hap we looked before us and saw the danger before we came to it. But what have you seen? Seen? Why, the valley itself, which is as dark as pitch. We also saw the hobgoblins, satyrs, and dragons of the pit. We heard also in that valley a continual howling and yelling, as of a people under unutterable misery, who there sat bound in affliction and irons. And over that valley hangs the discouraging clouds of confusion. Death also doth always spread his wings over it. In a word, it is every whit dreadful, being utterly without order. Then said Christian, I perceive not yet by what you have said, but that this is my way to the desired haven. Be it thy way, we will not choose it for ours. So they parted, and Christian went on his way, but still with his sword drawn in his hand, for fear lest he should be assaulted. I saw then in my dream, so far as this valley reached, there was on the right hand a very deep ditch. That ditch is it into which the blind have led the blind in all ages, and have both there miserably perished. Again, behold, on the left hand there was a very dangerous quag, which I guess that's crag, into which if even a good man falls, he can find no bottom for his foot to stand on. Into that crag King David once did fall, and had no doubt therein been smothered, had not he that is able plucked him out. The pathway was here also exceedingly narrow, and therefore good Christian was the more put to it, For when he had sought in the dark to shun the ditch on the one hand, he was ready to tip over into the mire on the other. Also, when he sought to escape the mire without great carefulness, he would readily fall into the ditch. Uh, oh, maybe quag is a quagmire. Quagmire. There we go. Not crag, quag. Quagmire. There we go. Okay. Then he went on, and I heard him here sigh bitterly, for besides the dangers mentioned above, the pathway was here so dark that often times when he lift up his foot to set forward, he knew not where or upon what he should set it next. About the midst of this valley, I perceived the mouth of hell to be, and it stood also hard by the wayside. Poor man, where art thou now? Thy day is night. Good man, be not cast down. Thou yet art right. Thy way to heaven lies by the gates of hell. Cheer up, hold out. With thee it shall go well. Now, thought Christian, what shall I do? And ever and anon the flame and smoke would come out in such abundance, with sparks and hideous noises, things that cared not for the Christian's sword, as did Apollyon's before, that he was forced to put up his sword and betake himself to another weapon called all prayer. So he cried out in my hearing, O Lord, I beseech thee, deliver my soul. Thus he went on a great while, yet still flames would be reaching towards him. Also he heard doleful voices and rushings to and fro, so that sometimes he thought he should be torn in pieces or trodden down, like mire in the streets. This frightful sight was seen. These dreadful noises were heard by him for several miles together, and coming to a place where he had thought he heard a company of fiends coming forward to meet him, he stopped and began to muse what he had best do. Sometimes he had half a thought to go back. Then again he thought he might be halfway through the valley. He remembered also how he had already vanquished many a danger, and that the danger of going back might be much more than for to go forward. So he resolved to go on. Yet the fiends seemed to come nearer and nearer, and that when they were come even almost at him, he cried out with a most vehement voice, I will walk in the strength of the Lord God. So they gave back and came no further. One thing I would not let slip. I took notice that now poor Christian was so confounded that he did not know his own voice, and thus I perceived it. Just when he was come over against the mouth of the burning pit, one of the wicked ones got behind him and stepped up softly to him, and whisperingly suggested many grievous blasphemies to him, which he verily thought he had proceeded from his own mind. This put Christian more to it than anything that he had met with before, and even to think that he should now blaspheme him that he loved so much before. Yet could he have helped it, he would not have done it. But he had not the discretion neither to stop his ears, nor to know from whence those blasphemies came. When Christian had traveled in this disconsolate condition for some considerable time, he thought he heard the voice of a man as going before him, saying, Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear none ill, for thou art with me. Then he was glad, and that for these reasons. First, because he had gathered from thence that some who feared God were in the valley as well as himself. Secondly, for that he perceived God was with them, though in that dark and dismal state, and why not, thought he, with me, though by reason of the impediment that attends his place I cannot perceive it. Thirdly, he hoped that could he overtake them, excuse me, to have company by and by. So he went on and called to him that was before, but he knew not what to answer, for that He also thought himself to be alone. And by the day broke. Then said Christian, He hath turned the shadow of death into morning. Excuse me. Ah, this is hard on the throat. We will do 17 more pages. We've done 33 so far. Now, morning being come, he looked back, not of desire to return, but to see by the light of day what hazards he had gone through in the dark. So he saw more perfectly in the ditch that was on one hand, and the quag that was on the other, and also how narrow the way which was laid betwixt them both. Also now he saw the hobgoblins and satyrs and dragons of the pit, but all afar off. For after the break of day they came not nigh, yet they were discovered to him according to that which is written, He discovereth deep things out of the darkness, and bringeth out to light the shadow of death. Now was Christian much affected with his deliverance from all the dangers of his solitary way, which dangers, though he feared them more before, yet he saw them more clearly now, because the light of the day made them conspicuous to him. And about this time the sun was rising, and this was another mercy to Christian, for he must note that though the first part of the valley of the shadow of death was dangerous, yet this second part, which he was yet to go, was, if possible, far more dangerous. For from the place where he now stood even to the end of the valley, the way was all along set so full of snares, traps, gins, nets here, and so full of pits, pitfalls, deep holes, and shelvings down there, that had it now been dark, as it was when he came, the first part of the way, had he had 1,000 souls, they would had in reason been cast away. But as I said just now, the sun was rising. Then said he, His candle shineth on my head, and by his light I go through darkness. In this light therefore he came to the end of the valley. And now I saw in my dream that at the end of the valley lay blood, bones, ashes, and mangled bodies of men, even of pilgrims that had gone this way formerly. And while I was musing what should be the reason, I espied a little before me a cave where two giants, Pope and Pagan, dwelt in old time, by whose power and tyranny the men whose bones, blood, ashes, etc., lay there were cruelly put to death. But by this place Christian went without much danger, whereat I somewhat wondered. But I have learnt since that Pagan has been dead many a day, and as for the other, though he be yet alive, he is by reason of age, and also of the many shrewd brushes that he met with in his younger days, grown so crazy and stiff in his joints that he can now do little more than sit in his cave's mouth, grinning at pilgrims as they go by, and biting his nails because he cannot come at them. Then I saw that Christian went on his way, yet at the sight of the old man that sat in the mouth of the cave, he could not tell what to think, especially because he spake to him, though he could not go after him, saying, You will never mend till more of you be burned. But he held his peace, and set a good face on it, and so went by, and catcheth no hurt. Then sang Christian, O world of wonders, I can say no less, that I should be preserved in that distress that I have met with here. O blessed be that hand that from it hath delivered me. Dangers in the darkness, devils, hell, and sin, yet did compass me while I this vale was in. Yea, snares and pits and traps and nets did lie my path about, that worthless silly I might have been catched, entangled, and cast down. But since I live, let Jesus wear the crown. Now as Christian went on his way, he came to a little ascent, which was cast up on purpose that pilgrims might see before them. Up there, therefore, Christian went, and looking forward, he saw Faithful before him upon his journey. Then Christian said aloud, Ho ho, so ho, stay, and I will be your companion. At that, Faithful looked behind him, to whom Christian cried again, Stay, stay, till I come up to you. But Faithful answered, No, I am upon my life, and the avenger of blood is behind me. At this Christian was somewhat moved, and putting to all his strength, he quickly got up with Faithful, and also did overrun him, so the last was first. Then did Christian vaingloriously smile, because he had gotten the start of his brother, but not taking good heed of his feet, he suddenly stumbled and fell, and could not rise again until Faithful came up to help him. Then I saw in my dream they went very lovingly on together, and had sweet discourse of all things that had happened to them in their pilgrimage. And thus Christian began. My honored and well-loved brother Faithful, I am glad I have overtaken you, and that God has so tempered our spirits that we can walk as companions in this so pleasant a path. I had thought, dear friend, to have had your company quite from our town, but you did get the start of me, wherefore I was forced to come thus much of the way alone. How long did you stay in the city of destruction before you set out after me on your pilgrimage? Till I could stay no longer, for there was great talk presently after you was gone out, that our city would be in short time in fire from heaven, and burned to the ground. What, did your neighbors talk so? Yes, 'twas for a little while in everybody's mouth. What, and did no more of them but you come out to escape the danger? Though there was, as I said, great talk thereabout, yet I do not think they did firmly believe it, for in the heat of the discourse I heard some of them deridingly speak of you, and of your desperate journey, for so they called this your pilgrimage. But I did not believe them. But I did believe, and do still, that the end of our city will be with fire and brimstone from above, and therefore I have made mine escape. Did you hear no talk of neighbor Pliable? Yes, Christian, I heard that he followed you till he came to the Slough of Despond, where, as some said, he fell in, but he would not be known to have done. But I am sure he was soundly bedabbled with that kind of dirt. And what said the neighbors to him? He hath, since his going back, has been had greatly in derision, and that among all sorts of people some do mock and despise him, and scarce will set him on work. He is now 7 times worse than if he had never gone out of the city. But why should they be so set against him, since they also despise the way he forsook? Oh, they say, hang him, for he is a turncoat. He was not true to his profession. I think God has stirred up even his enemies to hiss at him, and make him a proverb, because he has forsaken the way. Had you no talk with him before you came out? I met him once in the streets, but he leered away on the other side as one ashamed of what he had done, so I spoke not to him. Well, at my first setting out I had hopes of that man, but now I fear he will perish in the overthrow of the city, for it has happened to him, according to the true proverb, the dog is turned to his vomit again, and the sow that was washed to her wallowing in the mire. These are my fears of him too, but who can hinder that which will be? Well, neighbor Faithful, said Christian, let us leave him and talk of things that more immediately concern ourselves. Tell me now what you have met with on the way as you came, for I know that you have met with some things, or else it may be writ for a wonder. I escaped the slough that I perceive you fell into, and got up to the gate without much danger, though with one whose name was Wanton, that had like to have done me a mischief. 'Twas well you escaped her net. Joseph was hard put to it by her, and he escaped her as you did, but it had like to have cost him his life. But what did she do to you? You cannot think but that you know something. What a flattering tongue she had! She lay at me hard to turn aside with her, promising me all manner of content. Nay, she did not promise you the content of good conscience. You know what I mean. All carnal and fleshly content. Thank God you have escaped her. The abhorred of the Lord shall fall into her ditch. Nay, I know not whether I did wholly escape her or no. Why I trow you did not consent to her desires. No, not to defile myself, for I remembered an old writing that I had seen, which said, her steps take hold of hell. So I shut mine eyes, that because I would not be bewitched with her looks, then she railed on me, and I went my way. Did you meet with no other assault as you came? When I came to the foot of the hill called Difficulty, I met with a very aged man, who asked me what I was, and whither bound. I told him that I was a pilgrim going to the celestial city. Then said the old man, Thou lookest like an honest fellow. Thou wilt be content to dwell with me for the wages I shall give to thee. And I asked him his name, and where he dwelt. He said his name was Adam the First, and I dwell in the town of Deceit. I asked him then what was his work, and what were the wages he would give. He told me that his work was many delights, and his wages that I should be his heir at last. I further asked him what house he kept, and what other servants he had. So he told me that his house was maintained with all the dainties of the world, and that his servants were those of his own begetting. Then I asked him if he had any children. He said that he had but 3 daughters, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, and that I should marry them all if I would. Then I asked him how long time he would have me live with him, and he told me as long as he lived himself. Christian. Well, what conclusion came the old man and you to at last? Why, at first I found myself somewhat inclinable to go with the man, for I thought he spake fair. But looking in his forehead as I talked with him, I saw there written, Put off the old man with his deeds. And how then? Then it came burning hot into my mind, whatever he said, and however he flattered, when he got me to his house, he would sell me for a slave. So I bid him forbear to talk, for I would not come near the door of his house. Then he reviled me, and told me that he would send such a one after me that should make my way bitter to my soul. Pardon me. So I turned to go away from him. But just as I turned myself to go thence, I felt him take hold of my flesh and give me such a deadly twitch back that I thought he had pulled part of me after himself. This made me cry, "O wretched man!" So I went on my way up the hill. Now when I had gotten halfway up, I looked behind me, and saw one coming after me, swift as the wind. So he overtook me just about the place where the settle stands. Just there, said Christian, did I sit down to rest me, but being overcome with sleep, I there lost this roll out of my bosom. But good brother, said Faith, hear me out. So soon as the man overtook me, he was but a word and a blow. For down he knocked me, and laid me for dead. But when I was a little come again to myself, I asked him wherefore he served me so. He said, because of my secret inclining to Adam the first. And with that he struck me another deadly blow on the breast, and beat me down backward, so I lay at his foot dead as before. So when I came to myself again, I cried him mercy. But he said, I know not how to show mercy, and with that knocked me down again. He had doubtless made an end of me, but that one came by and bid him forbear. Who was it that bid him forbear? I did not know him at first, but as he went by I perceived the holes in his hand and his side, and then I concluded that he was our Lord. So I went up the hill. That man that overtook you, said Christian, was Moses. He spareth none, neither knoweth he to show mercy to those that transgress his law. I know it very well. It was not the first time that he has met me with me. 'Twas he that came to me when I dwelt securely at my home, and that told me he would burn my house over my head if I stayed there. But did you see the house that stood there on the top of the hill, the side which Moses met you? Yes, and the lions too, before I came at it. But for the lions, I think they were asleep, for it was about noon, and because I had so much of the day before me, I passed by the porter and came down the hill. He told me indeed that he saw you go by, but I wish you had called at the house, for they would have showed you so many rarities that you would have scarce have forgot them to the day of your death. But pray tell me, did you meet nobody in the valley of humility? Yes, I met with one discontent who would willingly have persuaded me to go back with him. His reason for that the valley was altogether without honor. He told me, moreover, that there to go was the way to disobey all my friends, as pride, arrogance, self-conceit, worldly glory with others, who he knew, as he said, would be very much offended if I made such a fool of myself as to wade through this valley. Well, and how did you answer him? I told him that altogether all these that he named might claim kindred of me, and rightly, for indeed they were my relations according to the flesh. Yet since I became a pilgrim, they have disowned me, as I have also rejected them. Therefore they were to me now no more than if they had never been of my lineage. I told him, moreover, that as to this valley, he had quite misrepresented the thing, for before honor is humility, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Therefore, said I had rather go through the valley to the honor that was so accounted by the wisest, than choose that which he esteemed most worthy of our affections. Met you with nothing else in the valley? Yes, I met with shame. But of all the men that I met within my pilgrimage, he, I think, bears the wrong name. The other would be said nay, after a little argumentation, and somewhat else, but this bold-faced shame would never have done. Why, what did he say to you? What? Why, he objected against religion itself. He said it was a pitiful, low, sneaking business for a man to mind religion. He said that a tender conscience was an unmanly thing, and that for a man to watch over his words and ways, so as to tie up himself from that hectoring liberty that the brave spirits of the times accustom themselves unto, would make me the ridicule of the times. He objected also that but few of the mighty, the rich, or wise were ever of my opinion, nor any of them neither, before they were persuaded to be fools, and to be of voluntary fondness to venture the loss of all, for nobody else knows what. He moreover objected the base and low estate and condition of those that were chiefly the pilgrims of the times which they lived, and also their ignorance, want of understanding in all natural science. Yea, he did hold me to it, that rate also about a great many more things than here I relate, as that it was a shame to sit whining and mourning under a sermon, and a shame to come sighing and groaning home, that it was a shame to ask my neighbor forgiveness for petty faults, or to make restitution where I had taken from any. He said that he said also that religion made a man grow strange to the great because of a few vices, which he called by finer names, and made him his own and respect the base and made him his own and respect the base because of the same religious fraternity. And is not this, said he, a shame? And what did you say to him? Say! I could not tell what to say at first. Yea, he put me to it, that my blood came up to my face. Even this shame fetched it up also, and had also beat me quite off. But at last I began to consider that which is that which is highly esteemed among men is had in abomination with God. And I thought again, this shame tells me what men are, but it tells me nothing what God or the Word of God is. And I thought, moreover, that at the day of doom we shall not be doomed to death of life according to the hectoring spirits of the world, but according to the wisdom and law of the highest. Therefore, thought I, what God says is best, best, though all the men in the world are against it, seeing that God prefers his religion, seeing God prefers a tender conscience, seeing that they make themselves fools for the kingdom of heaven are wisest, and that the poor man that loveth Christ is richer than the greatest man in the world that hates him. Shame, depart, thou art an enemy to my salvation. Shall I entertain thee against my sovereign Lord? How then shall I look in him the face at his coming? Should I now be ashamed of his ways and servants, how can I expect the blessing? But indeed this shame was a bold villain. I could scarce shake him out of my company. Yea, he would be haunting of me, and continually whispering me in the ear some or one or other of the infirmities that attend religion. But at last I told him 'twas but in vain to attempt further in this business, for those things that he disdained, in those did I see most glory. And so at last I got past this importunate one, and when I had shaken him off, I began to sing, the trials that those men do meet withal, that are obedient to the heavenly call, are manifold and suited to the flesh, and come and come and come again afresh. Now or sometime else we by them may be taken, overcome, and cast away. Let the pilgrims then be vigilant and quit themselves like men. I am glad, my brother, that thou didst withstand this villain so bravely. For of all that thou sayest, I think he has the wrong name. For he is so bold as to follow us in the streets, and to attempt to put us to shame before all men. That is, to make us ashamed of what is good. But if he was not himself audacious, he would never attempt to do as he does. But let us still resist him, for notwithstanding all his bravadoes, he promoteth the fool and none else. The wise shall inherit glory, said Solomon, but shame shall be the promotion of fools. I think we must cry to him for help against shame, that would have us be valiant for truth upon the earth. You say true, but did you meet nobody else in that valley? No, not I, for I had sunshine all the rest of the way, through that and also through the valley of the shadow of death. 'Twas well for you, I am sure it fared far otherwise with me. I had for a long season, as soon as almost as I entered into that valley, a dreadful combat with the foul fiend Apollyon. Yea, I thought verily he would have killed me, especially when he got me down and crushed me under him, as if he would have crushed me to pieces. For as he threw me, my sword fell out of my hand. Nay, he told me he was sure of me, But I cried to God, and he heard me, and delivered me out of my troubles. Then I entered into the valley of the shadow of death, and had no light for almost half the way through it. I thought I should have been killed there over and over. But at last day brake and the sun rose, and I went through that which was behind with more ease and quiet. Moreover, and this is the narrator, I saw in my dream that as they went on, faithful as he chanced to look on one side, saw a man whose name is Talkative walking at distance beside them, for in this place there was room enough for them all to walk. He was a tall man, and something more comely at a distance than at hand. To this man, Faithful addressed himself in this manner: Friend, whither away? Are you going to the heavenly country? I am going to that place. Then that is well. Then I hope we may have your good company. With a good will I be your companion. Come then, let us go together, and let us spend our time discoursing of things that are profitable. To talk of things that are good to me is very acceptable with you or with any other. I am glad that I have met with those that incline to so good a work. For to speak the truth, there are but few that care thus to spend their time as they are in their travels, but choose much rather to be speaking of things to no profit, and this hath been a trouble to me. This is a thing indeed to be lamented, for what things so worthy of the use of the tongue and mouth of men on earth as are the things of the God of heaven? I like you wonderfully well, for your saying is full of conviction. And I will add, what things so pleasant and what so profitable as to talk of the things of God? What things so pleasant? That is, if a man hath any delight in things that are wonderful. For instance, if a man doth delight to talk of the history or mystery or of things, or if a man doth love to talk of miracles and wonders and signs, what shall he find things recorded so delightful and so swiftly penned as in the Holy Scripture? That's true, but to be profited by such things in our talk should be which we design. That is it what I have said. For to talk of such things is most profitable, for by doing so a man may get knowledge of many things, as of the vanity of earthly things, and the benefit of those things above. Thus, in general, but more particularly by this a man may learn the necessity of the new birth, the insufficiency of our works, the needs of Christ's righteousness, etc. Besides, by this a man may learn by talk, and what it is to repent, to believe, to pray, to suffer, or the like. By this also a man may learn what are the great promises and consolations of the gospel to his own comfort. Further, by this a man may learn to refute false opinions, to vindicate the truth, and also to instruct the ignorant. All this is true, said Faithful, and glad am I to hear these things from you. Alas, the want of this is the cause that so few understand the need of faith and the necessity of a work of grace in their soul in order to eternal life, but ignorantly live in the works of the law, by which a man can by no means attain the kingdom of heaven. But by your leave, heavenly knowledge of these is the gift of God. No man attaineth to them by human industry, or only by the talk of them. All this I know very well, for a man can receive nothing except it be given to him from heaven. All is of grace, not of works. I could give you 100 scriptures for the confirmation of this. Well then, said Faithful, what is the one thing that we shall at this time found in our discourse upon? What you will, I will talk of things heavenly or things earthly, things more mortal, or things things earthly, things moral or things evangelical, things sacred or things profane, things past or things to come, things foreign or things at home, things more essential or things circumstantial, provided that it be done to our profit. By the way, there's like notes in the sidebar I've been mostly ignoring, but like the notes are being snarky and going, oh brave talkative" every time he speaks. And I think that's very funny. Now Faithful began to wonder, and stepping to Christian, for he walked all this while by himself, and said to him, but softly, "What a brave companion have we got! Surely this man will make an excellent pilgrim." At this Christian modestly smiled, and said, "This man with whom you are so taken will beguile you with this tongue of his, 20 of them that know him not." "Do you know him then?" "Know him? Yes, better than he knows himself." "Pray, what is he?" "His name is Talkative. He dwelleth in our town. I wonder you should be a stranger to him, only I consider that our town is large." "Whose son is he, and whereabout doth he dwell?" "He is one of the Saywells. He dwelt in the Prating Row, and he is known of all that are acquainted with him, by the name of Talkative in Prating Row. And notwithstanding his fine tongue, he is but a sorry fellow." "Well, he seems to be a pretty young man, a very pretty man." "That is to them that hath not through acquaintance with him, for he is best abroad near home. He is ugly enough. Your saying that he is a pretty man brings to my mind that which I have observed in the work of the painter, whose pictures show best at a distance, but very near more unpleasing." "But I am ready to think you do but jest, because you smiled." "God forbid that I should jest, though I smiled, in this manner, or that I should accuse him any falsely. I will give you a further discovery of him. This man for any company, and for any talk, as he talketh with you now, so he will talk when he is on the ale bench, and the more drink he hath in his crown, the more of these things he hath in his mouth. Religion hath no place in his heart or conversation. All he hath lieth in his tongue, and his religion is to make a noise therewith." "Say you so? Then I am in this man greatly deceived." "Deceived! You may be sure of it. Remember the proverb, 'They say and do not.' But the kingdom of God is not in word, but in power. He talketh of prayer, of repentance, of faith, and of new birth, but he knows but only to talk of them. I have been in his family, and observed him both at home and abroad, and I know that I say of him is truth. His house is as empty of religion as is the white of an egg is of savour. There is neither prayer nor sign of repentance for sin. Yea, the brute in his kind serves God far better than he. He is the very stain, reproach, and shame of religion to all that know him. It can hardly have a good word in all that end of the town where he dwells. Through him, thus say the common people that know him, a saint abroad, and a devil at home. His poor family finds it so. He is such a churl, and such a railer at, and so unreasonable with his servants, that they neither know how to do for or speak to him. Men that have any dealings with him say 'tis better to deal with a Turk than with him, for fairer dealings they shall have at their hands. This talkative, if possible, will go beyond them, defraud, beguile, and overreach them. Besides, he brings up his sons to follow his steps, and if he findeth if any of them a foolish timorousness, for so he calls the first appearance of a tender conscience, He calls them fools and blockheads, and by no means will employ them in much or speak to their commendation before others. For my part, I am of the opinion that he has, by his wicked life, caused many to stumble and fall, and will be, if God prevent not, the ruin of many more. Well, my brother, I am bound to believe you, not only because you say you know him, but also because, like a Christian, you make your reports of men. For I cannot think that you speak of these things of ill will, but because it is even so as you say. Had I known him no more than you, I might perhaps have thought of him as at the first you did. Yea, had he received this report at their hands, only that they are enemies of religion, I should have thought it had been slander, a lot that often falls from bad men's mouths upon good men's names and professions. But all these things, yea, and a great many more of as bad of my own knowledge, I can prove him guilty. Excuse me. I can prove him guilty of. Besides, good men are ashamed of him. They can neither call him brother nor friend, and the very naming of him among them makes them blush if they know him. Well, I see that saying and doing are two things, and hereafter I shall better observe this distinction. They are two things indeed, and are as diverse as are the soul and the body. As the body is without the soul is a dead carcass, so saying, if it be alone, is but a carcass also. The soul of religion is the practic part. Pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. This talkative is not aware of. He thinks that hearing and saying will make a good Christian, and thus he deceiveth his own soul. Hearing is but as the sowings of the seed. Talking is not sufficient to prove that fruit is indeed in the heart and life. And let us assure ourselves that at the day of doom men shall be judged according to their fruits. It will not be said then, do you believe? But were you doers or talkers only? And accordingly shall they be judged. The end of the world is compared to our harvest, and you know men at harvest regard nothing but fruit. Not that anything can be accepted that is not of faith. But I speak this to show you how insignificant the profession of talkative will be at that day. This brings to my mind that of Moses, by which he describeth the beast that is clean. He is such as one that parteth the hoof and cheweth the cud, that parteth the hoof only, or that cheweth the cud only. The hare cheweth the cud, but yet is unclean, because he parteth not the hoof. And this truly resembles talkative. He cheweth the cud, he seeketh knowledge, he cheweth upon the word, but he divided not the hoof. He parteth not with the way of sinners, but as the hare retaineth the foot of a dog or bear, therefore he is unclean. You have spoken, said Christian, for I know the true gospel sense of these texts, and I will add another thing. Paul calleth some men, yea, and those great talkers too, sounding brass and tingling cymbals. That is, as he expounds them in another place, things without life-giving sound. Things without life, that is, without the true faith and grace of the gospel, and consequently things that shall never be placed in the kingdom of heaven among those that are the children of life, though their sound by their talk be as if it were the tongue or voice of an angel. Well, I was not so fond of his company at first, said Faithful, but I am as sick of it now. What shall we do to be rid of him? Take my advice and do as I bid you, and you shall find that he will soon be sick of your company too, except God shall touch his heart and turn it. What would you have me do? Why, go to him and enter in some serious discussion about the power of religion, and ask him plainly, when he has approved of it, for that he will, whether this thing be set up in his heart, house, or conversation. Then Faithful stepped forward again and said to Talkative, Come now, what cheer? How is it now? Oh, thank you. Well, I thought we should have had a great deal of talk by this time. Well, if you will, we will fall to it now. Since you left it with me to state the question, let it be this. How doth the saving grace of God discover itself when it is in the heart of man? I perceive that our talk must be about the power of things. Well, 'tis a good question, and I shall be willing to answer you, and take my answer in brief thus. First, where the grace of God is in the heart, it causes there a great outcry against sin. Secondly, nay, hold, said Faithful, let us consider of one at once. I think you should rather say it shows itself by the inclining of the soul to abhor its sin. Why, what difference is there between crying out against and abhorring of sin? Oh, a great deal. A man may cry out against sin. Hold on a second. I'm on page 100. All right. Okay. Okay. He's all right. Yeah, I see a good stopping point. Uh, oh, a great deal. A man may cry out against sin of policy, but he cannot abhor it, but by virtue of a godly antipathy against it. I have heard many cry out against sin in the pulpit, who yet can abide it well enough in the heart, house, and conversation. Joseph's mistress cried out in a loud voice as if she had been very holy, but she would willingly, notwithstanding that, have committed uncleanness with him. Some cry out against sin, even as the mother cries out against her child in her lap when she calleth it slut and naughty girl, and then falls to hugging and kissing it. You lie at the catch, I perceive. No, not I, for I am only setting things right. But what is the second thing whereby you would prove a discovery of the work of grace in the heart? Great knowledge of the gospel mysteries, replied Talkative. This sign should have been first, but first or last it is also false. For knowledge, great knowledge, may be obtained in the mysteries of the gospel, and yet no work of grace in the soul. Yea, if a man have all knowledge, he may yet be nothing, and so consequently be no child of God. When Christ said, Do you know all these things? And disciples had answered him, Yes. He added, Blessed are ye if you do them. He doth not lay the blessing in the knowing of them, but in the doing of them. For there is a knowledge that is not attended with doing. He that knoweth his master's will and doeth it not. A man may know like an angel, and yet be no Christian. Therefore your sign is not true. Indeed, to know is a thing that pleaseth talkers and boasters, but to do is that which pleaseth God. Not that the heart can be without knowledge, for without that the heart is not. There is therefore knowledge and knowledge. Knowledge that resteth in the bare speculation of things, and knowledge that is accompanied with the grace of faith and love, which puts a man upon doing even the will of God from the heart. The first of these will serve the talker, but without the other the true Christian is not content. Give me understanding, and I shall keep thy law. Yea, I shall observe it with my whole heart. You lie at the catch again. This is not for edification. Well, if you please, propound another sign how this work of grace discover itself where it is. Not I, for I see we shall not agree. Well, if you will not, will you give me leave to do it? You may use your liberty. A work of grace in the soul discovereth itself, either to him that hath it, or to standers by. To him that hath it, thus it gives him the conviction of sin, especially for the defilement of his nature, and the sin of unbelief, for the sake of which he is sure to be damned, if he findeth not the mercy at God's hand by faith in Jesus Christ. Excuse me. This sight and sense of things worketh in him sorrows and shame for sin. He findeth moreover revealed in him the Saviour of the world, and the absolute necessity of closing with him for life, at the which he findeth hungerings and thirstings after him, to which hungerings, etc., the promise is made. Now, according to the strength or weakness of his faith in his Saviour, so is his joy and peace, so is his love to holiness, so are his desires to know him more, and to serve him in this world. But though I say it discovereth himself thus unto him, yet it is but seldom that he is able to conclude that this is the work of grace, because his corruptions now and his abused reason makes his mind to misjudge the matter. Therefore, in him that hath this work, there is required a very sound judgment, before he can with steadiness conclude that this is the work of grace. By others it is thus discovered. By an experimental confession of his faith in Christ. 2, by a life answerable to that confession, to wit, a life of holiness, heart holiness, family holiness if he has a family, and by conversation holiness in his word, which in the general teacheth him inwardly to abhor his sin, and himself for that in secret, to suppress it in his family, and to promote holiness in the world, not by talk only, as a hypocrite or a talkative person may do, but by a practical subjection in faith and love to the power of the word. And now, sir, as to this brief description of the work of grace, and also by the discovery of it, if you have aught to object, object. If not, then give me leave to propound you to a second question. Nay, it is not now to excuse me. Nay, my part is not now to object, but to hear. Let me therefore have your second question. It is this: do you experience the first part of this description of it, and doth your life and conversation testify the same, or standeth your religion in word or in tongue, and not in deed or truth? And truth. Pray, if you incline to answer me in this, say no more than you know the God above will say amen to, and also nothing but what your conscience can justify you in. For not he that commendeth himself is approved, but whom the Lord commendeth. But besides to say I am thus, and thus when my conversation and all my neighbors tell me I lie, it is great wickedness. Then Talkative at first began to blush, but recovering himself, thus he replied: You come now to experience, to conscience and God, and to appeal to him for justification of what is spoken. This kind of discourse I did not expect, nor am I disposed to give an answer to such questions, because I catch not myself thereto, unless you take upon you to be a catechizer, and though you should do, yet I refuse to make you my judge. But I pray will you tell me why you ask me such questions? Because I saw you forward to talk, and because I knew not that you had aught else but notion. Besides, to tell you all the truth, I have heard of you, that you are a man whose religion lies in talk, and that your conversation gives you your mouth profession the lie. They say you are a spot among Christians, and that religion fareth the worse for your ungodly conversations, that some have already stumbled at your wicked ways, and that more are in danger of being destroyed thereby. Your religion and an alehouse, and covetousness, and uncleanness, and swearing, and lying, and vain company keeping, etc., will stand together. The proverb is true of you, which is said of a whore to. Sorry, I haven't actually read this in a very long time. I've forgotten about this. That she is a shame to all women, so you are a shame to all professors. Since you are ready to take up reports and to judge so rashly as you do, I cannot but conclude you are some peevish or melancholy man not fit to be discoursed with, and so adieu. Okay. Then came up Christian and said to his brother, I told you how it would happen. Your words and his lusts could not agree. And the sidebar says, good riddance. He had rather leave your company than reform his life. But he is gone, as I said, let him go. The loss is no man's but his own. He has saved us the trouble of going from him, for he continuing, as I suppose he will do, as he is, he would have been but a blot on our company. Besides, the apostle says, from such withdraw thyself. But I am glad we had this little discourse with him. It may happen that he will think of it again. However, I have dealt plainly with him, and so am clear of his blood if he perisheth. You did well to talk so plainly with him as you did, said Christian. But there is but little of this faithful dealing with men nowadays, and that makes religion to stink in the nostrils of many as it doth. For they are these talkative fools, whose religion is only in word, and are debauched and vain in their conversation, that, being so much admitted into the fellowship of the godly, do stumble in the word, blemish Christianity, and grieve the sincere. I wish that all men would deal with such as you have done. Then should they either be made more conformable, to religion, or the company of saints would be too hot for them. How talkative at first lifts up his plumes, how bravely does he speak, how he presumes to drive down all before him, but so soon as faithful talks of the heart work like the moon, that's past the full into the wane he goes, and so will all he that heart work knows. Thus they went on talking of what they had seen by the way, and so made that way easy, which would otherwise no doubt have been tedious to them, for now they went through a wilderness. And we'll stop there. They're about to meet up again with Evangelist and meet the town of Vanity Fair, which is an absolutely dramatic scene. Let's see here. If I go about 50 pages ahead, yes, there's still some more, quite a bit. Uh, hmm. Talkative is a interesting character to a point because he's actually quite empty. A better name for him perhaps might be hypocrite. Um, but that's not really as accurate as may be expected from other characters here, even ignoring the fact that we already met a hypocrite. In reality, talkative is just that. He's talkative. He has nothing more than words to say, and he never performs any deed in reality. Whereas, our characters go through the valley of shadow of death, fight Apollyon, climb the hill, and many other, troubles beside. Talkative seems to have been affected by nothing, and shows no sign of battle, no sign of having done any of the work. It's very likely that he did not enter through the narrow gate that Christian, faithful, and evangelist went through, but rather he probably climbed over in some places. What were their names? Hypocrisy and timorousness, I think, as they did. It's one of the best parts about Pilgrim's Progress is the fact that Pilgrim's Progress shows the Christian life and the characters that you'll meet along the way. It's a straight up allegory. And what you can do is you can say, wait, this person is acting like talkative. He's talking about religion. For example, if you read Evola and he starts talking about religion and stuff like that. Well, guess what? Uh, there's something that's missing from Evola and those that follow him, and that is that most of them do not actually partake of the actions of traditionalism and wisdom that Evola supposedly propounds. Many I've studied a little bit of Evola, and maybe I missed some parts here. Even though he was Catholic, much of what he wrote about rejected Jesus Christ. They sought a God King without the literal God King. In reality, the truest form of Evola's work would have been to fully embrace Jesus Christ as the golden God King that he desires, that he talks about, that he is actively saying true things about. Much like talkative, he's saying stuff that is true saying. These people can accurately describe the world, and in a way, the need for God that is in every man. The problem is that many of them talk that talk, but then refuse at Jesus Christ. Or they're like Apollyon, where they demand service to the world again, otherwise you'll be destroyed, you'll be forgotten, you'll die a nothing death. The Lord won't provide you salvation. Or, insert what you want here. These characters create a way for us to understand how the Christian interacts with the troubles and tribulations of the world in more ways than just some sort of if you pray, it'll just go away. Christian had to actually fight Apollyon, and wrestle him and be almost killed by him. That doesn't sound like you just pray and he goes away. He had to reach out for the sword and stab the dude. Sometimes you have to call somebody a whore, like Faithful did to Talkative. And a shame to professors. Like there's a certain amount of like faithful action that needs to be taken place. You have to wrestle with the demons. You have to, walk through the valley of the shadow of death. You have to ignore the giant pope and the corpse of pagan along the side. Um, just giant pope gnawing on his fingernails. Uh, Giant pope can't hurt you. Giant pope literally can't hurt you. Uh, anyway, these things that if you look to study it, you can actually get quite a bit out of it, especially when it comes to questions of your own life that may or may not be properly discussed by the Bible. The Bible is absolutely great and all sufficient for it, but sometimes our own understanding is insufficient for what the Bible provides. And so while we desire to fulfill God's will, it may be that we don't have the wisdom for it by ourselves. This is why we have pastors and priests and elders and wise men and friends. And thank you all for on that word. Thank you all for joining me, my friends, my dear friends, my Christian friends, and even those who will be Christian friends. I hope you have a wonderful week. Next week, we will have something else to discuss with Anthony Marquetta, my good, dear co-host, and the rest of the people who may or may not be here. It's been kind of a quiet time. I hope you have a wonderful time with your families, that things weren't so bad, that no misfortune happened, that may not be undone with a kind word and a gentle thought. Have a good evening. Thank you for listening.